right. Happy Mother's Day weekend to you and those of you at our campuses as well. I'm just so grateful that we get to do part three, just a four-part series, but this is part three of a series called Work, It Matters. Can you do something with me? Can you thank Aaron Bewer for bringing it last weekend? So grateful for Aaron stepping in, and I want to begin with a question, and the question is a breakfast question. Furthermore, it's a going out to breakfast question. So if you are with someone that you came with today, or the person near you looks kind of friendly, talk about it amongst yourself. Favorite breakfast restaurant in Grand Rapids or wherever you're listening from. Take a few seconds. All right. Time's up. Some weeks ago, Chris and I, it was a day off, took off our compass, headed toward the direction of downtown, stopped at one of our favorite breakfast places. Unfortunately, it seemed like a couple thousand other people also stopped at that exact time at our favorite breakfast place. So long wait for a table, but there were stools available at the counter. Right? You know, the counter where you have a wonderful view where you can look right across and see the action inside the kitchen. And so rather than waiting for a table, Chris and I opted for the counter. We're sitting on these stools at the counter and we're looking through a fairly small window. Waitress, server comes and she takes our order, enters the order on a computer, which spits out little pieces of paper, which they then, pull out in the kitchen and then they put up. And I can't imagine the infinite combinations that are possible on those pieces of paper simply for a table. When you take eggs alone, that are eggs, over easy or basted or scrambled with cheese, eggs, Benedict, omelet combinations, toast. What kind of toast would you like? Rye toast, wheat toast, English muffin toast, white toast, and English muffin. Then you got your pancakes, your biscuits and gravy. And, maybe some waffles at a restaurant you go to. Then there's, breakfast burritos. There, different skillet combinations. There's, bacon, and there's sausage patties, there's sausage links. There's hundreds of combinations. And those individuals behind that window in the kitchen do the work of God. They create order out of chaos, and meals begin to appear up on the countertop, and then a server comes, collects her meals, and puts them on a platter with a balance that would be worthy of a circus act, and then takes that and delivers it to the tables, or in our case, the counter. And I'm looking at the skillet meal in front of me, wondering if those individuals on the other side of the window have any idea that they are an answer to my prayers. Even if they don't know it, do the people on the opposite side of that window in that crowded kitchen pushing out meals, do they have any idea, any concept that they are an answer to my prayers? What prayers, you may ask? Oh, this one, give us this day our daily bread. Give us this day our daily bread. Now, what if God answers that prayer through them? That is, what if God cares for me through their work? And what if God cares for them through my work? Now, if this is true, that God cares and loves for you through the work of other people, and if God loves and cares for other people through your work, then my friends, this changes everything about work. then that makes this a transformational, disruptive, radical conversation about work. Because so often we view vocational work as a means to earn money only. Now, making a living, supporting yourself is a matter of dignity. It's honorable. It is honorable to support yourself and to support a family if you're responsible for a family. But it appears to me that there's so much more to it than simply putting in hours at a place so that I get a check so that I can then finance my weekend. It seems to me that there's so much more going on than simply earning money at work to spend while I'm not at work. What if one of the purposes of work is that God cares for me through the work of other people, and God cares for them through your work? Brace yourself for 3 radical ideas about work that can transform the way you view your work, and it can transform the way you view the work of others. 3 radical ideas about work that can totally reframe the way you view your work, whether it's paid or unpaid, and the way it can frame the work of others and the way you can value the work of others. 3 radical ideas. And I think this applies whether your work is cutting deals or cutting hair or cutting lawns. It still applies. Whether your work involves drawing up plans for a home remodel or drawing blood in a medical office. I believe these 3 ideas can radically reshape the way you view your work, whether serving customers at a high-end restaurant or serving a 3-year-old macaroni and cheese. Whether you're a financial advisor or making change through a drive-up window. These 3 ideas can radically shift the way we view our work and the way we view the work of others. Radical idea number 1 is that work is an expression of God's care. Work is an expression of God's care. God cares for me, disguised through the work of others. In Matthew chapter 6, is this sermon on the Mount. Jesus is on a hillside. He's teaching his followers. And in the Sermon on the Mount, it's one of the places we find the Lord's Prayer, Matthew chapter 6, verse 9. He says, this then is how you should pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done here on earth, just as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Jesus taught his followers to pray, gracious Father, our Father in heaven, please provide today the things I need today. Give us today our daily bread. It's a common prayer. Give us today our daily bread. Give us today our daily bread. Give us today our daily bread. What if God says, okay, I will. However, I'm going to come to you disguised. I'm going to provide your daily bread and hash browns and coffee through those dudes on the other side of the window. I'm going to provide your daily bread through that gracious server who took your order. I'm going to provide your daily bread through the hostess that helped you find a seat here at the counter. I will supply your daily bread, but I will come to you disguised as these people who serve in this restaurant, even if they don't know it. They are doing my work even if they don't know it, and I am answering your prayer, give us today our daily bread. You go, Jeff, man, dude, that's a stretch. I mean, here you're grabbing one sentence out of the Lord's Prayer and shoving it into this series on work to make a point. Dude, I think it's a stretch. Where in the world would you get an idea like that? And the answer is from him, that guy right there. Anybody know who that guy is? Martin Luther. Martin, Martin Luther, German reformer of the church, 1500s, when Martin Luther was riffing on the topic of the Lord's Prayer, and he got to that one statement, that one request, give us today our daily bread. I want you to see what he wrote. He wrote this: when you pray for daily bread, as in the Lord's Prayer, give us today our daily bread, you are praying for everything that contributes to your having and enjoying your daily bread. You must open up and expand your thinking so that it reaches not only as far as the flour bin and baking oven, but also out over the broad fields, the farmlands, and the entire country that produces, processes, and conveys to us our daily bread. He says, open your mind. When you pray, give us our daily bread, it's not just the loaf. It's the farmer's field. It's the baker. It's the vehicle that brought this to you. Can we go back? Can we go back? Here we go, right here. He says, God answers your prayer disguised as the person growing the wheat. God answers your prayer disguised as the person who is baking the bread. God answers your prayer disguised as the individual who conveys the bread to you. God comes to you disguised as the individual who serves it to you. Luther would say, these are the masks of God by which he loves and cares for us. What Martin Luther, the German reformer, was indicating was this, that this is God's work. This is God's work. And in his day, it was revolutionary to have that thought. Because through the Middle Ages, the idea was that you only did God's work if you were a nun, a priest, or a monk. Everything else was secular work, not God's work. Luther began to open the scriptures and to be able to see that work through which God cares for other human beings through your hands. It's the work of God. The work of the farmer and the baker and the driver and the server is God's work. Work. It's one of the ways that God cares for others in our world. Work and cares. God cares for my teeth through the work of a dental hygienist. God cares for me being able to get from point A to point B through someone manufacturing automotive parts. God cares for the satisfaction of my hunger for the dude standing at the pizza oven. Summer, oh, how I love the enjoyment of summer. The bike, the kayak, kicking around in sandals. This is a bike that I neither designed nor manufactured. The kayak I pedal, I did not design or manufacture. The sandals that I kick around in all summer, not only are the daily needs of bread, but these other enjoyments of life. God communicates his goodness, even in the opportunities for recreation, through the work and the skill and the diligence of others. And so it is appropriate. There's this mealtime prayer. I don't know if you've ever heard this said at your table or maybe said yourself, but there's part of a mealtime prayer that often goes like this. God, bless this food and bless the hands that prepared it. God, bless this food to our bodies and bless the hands that prepared it. And I think when we pray a prayer like that, God bless this food in the hands that prepared it, we should probably think farther than the person who constructed the bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich at the kitchen island. There we go. I communicate for a living. At the Christian kitchen Christmas island. So when we say the hands that prepared it, is this the hands of the wheat farmer and the hands of the hog farmer? The hands of the field worker who is picking tomatoes and harvesting lettuce? God bless the hands that prepared it. Is this the hands of the person that wrote the software for the transportation company? And the hands of the person that stocked the shelves? I'm telling you, if you try to include everybody that was involved in your meal, the food is going to get very, very cold before you're done. And the question is this: what if God cares for you through the work of others? Well, what's the point? The point is this: what if one of the ways that God cares for you, loves you, and enriches your life is through common, ordinary work of others? And if God chooses to care for you and enrich your life through the common, ordinary work of others, that changes something about the way we view our work and the work of others. It might change the way we value other people. It might change the way we honor other people. So what do you do? I drive truck. Really, what do you deliver? Right now, a lot of produce. Produce? Like tomatoes and lettuce? Yeah, I guess so. Thank you. Thank you. You are an answer to my prayer. And he is. Give us this day our daily bread, and God comes to us disguised through the work of others. Now, there's a flip side to that. What that means is not only does God love and care for you through the work of others, it means that God loves and cares others through the work of you. If I were you, I'd get good at it, whatever it is. Radical idea number one, that work is an expression of God's care. Radical idea number two is that work is an expression of your love. Work is a way, one of the big ways, perhaps one of the most important ways to love other people. Work and expression of your love. Can we talk about this? Okay. Last week of Jesus' life. It's the week leading up to the violent crucifixion. And much of the time Jesus spent in the last week was in this structure right here. It was the great temple of Jerusalem. And Jesus would come into the temple area and teach day after day. He did this the week leading up to his death. A lot of it wasn't calm teaching. A lot of it had as hostility around the fringes. People would come trying to trap him in something. There were religious leaders in Jerusalem that wanted to frame him, that wanted to get him to say something that would be discrediting. And so a lot of Jesus' teaching that occurs in the last week occurs within a hostile atmosphere. And in the rounds of accusations and questions and traps that he's trying to step aside, a guy comes, he says, it seems to be an honest question. He says, all these commandments out there, there's hundreds of don't do this, do this. Of all which one is the most important? Like, give me commandment number one. And Jesus not only gives commandment number one, he gives commandment number one and commandment number two. Did any of you know the way Jesus is going to answer that question in the temple last week of his life? Anyone know the way he's going to answer that? Look at his answer with me, Mark chapter 12. He says, commandment like number one here, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. That is number one. Honor God with everything you got. Love God with your whole heart, your whole mind. Give him your brain, your thinking. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. He says that is like number one. He says, number two is like it. Real close. The second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. Read that with me. Ready? Beginning with love. Ready? Love your neighbor as yourself. Then he says, there is no commandment greater than these. I mean, if you love God with everything you have and you love the people around you, if you like them like you, if you sacrifice for them like you know how to sacrifice for you, he says, that's it. That's 1 and 2. There is no greater command, singular commandment, than these, plural. It's like these, I can't love God without loving you. There's no greater commandment than these. Love your neighbor as yourself. What I want to suggest to you is that one of the most powerful ways, well, how? Well, how? Love your neighbor as yourself. How? An answer that I would give this weekend would just be through your work. Through your work. You love others through the way you conduct yourself in your vocation, whatever that is, whether that's cutting deals or cutting lawns or cutting hair. Whether it's drawing up plans for a home renovation or drawing blood from someone's arm at a medical center, whatever your work happens to be, love your neighbor as yourself. How can be conducted through your work. Now, week number 1 showed this volume right here. It's by Tim Keller. Tim Keller was a pastor at Redeemer Presbyterian Church in New York City. He wrote a fantastic book called Every Good Endeavor, Connecting Your Work to God's Work. And I just want you to see something that Tim Keller wrote here on this topic. He said, there may be no better way to do what? 3 words, to love your neighbor, whether you are writing parking tickets, software, or books, than to simply do your work. There may be no better way to love your neighbor, whatever that kind of work is, than through your work. But only skillful, competent work will do, because to love well, you have to work well. By the way, some of you are going to be picking up Tim Keller's book and kind of reading through it, and you're going to get to chapter 4, which is work as service, and you are going to see that a whole bunch of my ideas this weekend, including the Martin Luther quote, are out of that chapter. And I mention that for this reason, because you would open up his book, you would get to chapter 4, and you would go, I can't believe this. He stole all this stuff from Jeff. Close. So wanted to credit, but he says, listen, there may be no better way to love your neighbor than through your work, than through your what do with much of your week and much of your life. But only skillful, competent work will do. If I want to love well, I need to work well. Sloppy work with a lousy attitude is not likely to love people well. I remember trying to break this down with my kids that now all hover around the age of 30, give or take. But when they were a little younger, Sarah, Andrew, and Alex, it'd be these weekends where their mom, my wife Chris, would go away for a retreat or a conference. I'm still amazed. Who would have thought you could totally destroy a house in just 2 nights? But we could. And then D-Day was coming, where mom was due to arrive back home, and the living room and the kitchen were in absolute upheaval. Sometimes the pep talk I would give would be this one. Now, guys, you know how much your mom loves a clean house. When she walks through that door, what if she walks through the door and when she looks at the living room and the kitchen, everything is clean like mom loves it? And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but that was the pep talk. But it wasn't just, hey, clean the house, load the dishwasher, get those things back to your bedroom, pick up the clothes. Where do the shoes go? It was, listen, work. We work well because we love well. And a clean house does matter to my wife. And when she walked in from a retreat, if everything was all over the place, this was not a good moment for any of us. I'm not sure we can love well unless we learn to work well. So how do you, I just challenge you, somehow connect loving well with your work, whatever that work is. You say, what do you do? I'm in medicine. Why'd you go into medicine? Dude, it's a great living. And, and, oh, yes, it alleviates suffering. Yeah, that too. Can we lose it somewhere along the line where we're earning and we just forget the end product, which is a healthier human being? And those of you in real estate, in a tough housing market where there's more people looking for houses and there are houses available, just man, when you succeed at getting an individual or a couple or a family, no, not into a house, into a home where they can be a family in that home and it matches what they can afford. I think it's a way to love people well. Work as an expression of love. Love your neighbor as yourself. If you are a roofer, the idea should go through your mind. I don't want to be standing in my house looking up and seeing water stains on my ceiling drywall. I want to treat them like I'd want to be treated. I want to do this well, even if it's kind of unappreciated and undervalued. Because I, whether or not they know it, get to love people through my work. But to love well, we need to work well. Now there is a massive consequence of this, or if we believe this, that to love well, to work well, we love well, and to love well, we work well. If we believe that, those of you who are in the process of selecting a career or selecting a new career or selecting a job or selecting a new job, man, and this can happen to a college-age student trying to pick a major. And this can happen to someone retooling in their mid-30s or their mid-40s or their mid-50s. A question is, how much does this pay? That's not insignificant because it's honorable to support ourselves. And yet, please don't take something that should be a question and turn it into the question. The only question. May I suggest to you that another question could be, knowing what I know about my talents and abilities, how can I be of greatest service to people? May I suggest to you that should be tossed in there as well? That how much does this pay should be a question, but not the question, not the only question. Run into someone, man or a woman, and say, hey, you're a teacher, right? And they go, yeah, but my brother-in-law started this company and I'm thinking about joining his company. I say, really, why? Well, I can make more there. Okay. Good question. Are you a good teacher? Yeah, I'm all right. And then turn to the friend. Is she a good teacher? Is he a good teacher? Unbelievable. Does a classroom thrive under her care? You wouldn't believe it. She's one of the best. Okay, listen, even if you can make more, just understand there's a difference between a better livelihood and a better life. There's a difference between a better livelihood and a better life. And I don't know that all that's involved, and I don't know what responsibilities, and maybe a shift is needed for economic reasons, but man, if you are in the zone and you are doing something that serves people and loves people well, if God is leading people and enriching their lives and caring for people through you, and you can eke out a living doing that, there's a difference between a better livelihood and a better life. One of the questions should be, can I be adequately paid? Am I well paid? That's a question. Another question is just the open-handed question that says, gracious God, knowing what I do about me, knowing what I do about the needs of other people, where can I best serve others? That's why this is a radical conversation for us to happen today. Radical conversation for us to have. Radical idea number 2, work and expression of your love. Commandment number 2, love your neighbor as yourself. How? through your work, through your work, through your work. See, God cares for you through the work of others. God loves others through the work of you. But to love well, we have to work well. And again, I just know as some of you are processing this, you're going like, Jeff, where I work, I'm unrecognized, I'm unthanked, I'm invisible. It's not work that I'm particularly passionate about. It's a for now job. Jeff, I'm doing a for now job. And how do you respond graciously and lovingly when people aren't particularly gracious and loving towards you? Any of you work in customer service? Any of you have the responsibility of hearing people gripe about things all stinking day long? Great. Work as an expression of my love. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. How do you love people when you're not getting the love back? How do you deal with people graciously when they're not necessarily dealing with you graciously? Is that even possible? Radical idea number 3. Radical idea number 3 has to do work as an overflow of grace. Work as an overflow of grace. And I want to return to this guy, Martin Luther, the monk in the 1500s, who was part of reforming the way the church thought, acted, and operated, at least in Germany. You got to know something about this guy's story. No one tried harder to earn the right to be accepted by God. He kept running into the word righteousness in the Bible. And the more he drilled into that, the more he became aware of his own unrighteousness. The more he read about needing to be right with God, just the more he realized how wrong he was with God. And he beat himself up over this. Literally, he beat himself up over this. Trying to measure up and always falling short. Trying to measure up and always falling short. And then this monk, Martin Luther, had a collision with something called grace. A conversation about grace is a conversation about that aspect of God's character that is wildly generous. That the Creator, our Father, gives and He gives and He gives. And this depressed, discouraged monk by the name of Martin Luther had a collision with grace, and it rocked him and it changed him, and this concept of grace began to overflow into every other area of life, like work. There were verses from the Bible that he began to see for the first time, like Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8. For it is by, what word? It is by grace that God rescued you. It's by grace that you've been saved, that you've been rescued. It is through faith. Listen, man, it's not from you, not from yourselves. It is a what? It is a gift of God. And Martin Luther began to understand that you don't have connection with God because you earn it. You get to be connected to the Creator, to the Heavenly Father, because of something He gives, not something that you do. And he began to understand the whole concept of the crucifixion, that when Jesus comes, when He lives here, and then when He dies, the story of the crucifixion is that Jesus comes to pay off bills that were not His. Jesus came to pay off debts that weren't His debts. They were my bills and they were your bills. And he forgives because the debt was canceled at the crucifixion, where he paid off for every mistake that we could ever make and every blunder that we were ever part of. And Martin Luther began to read, it's by grace that you've been rescued. It's through faith. Man, it's not from you. It's God's gift to you. This was mind-blowing. It began to affect every other area of life, including work. And by the way, just as we walk through it, and just as I read that to you, I know some of you have a view of religion that is getting like absolutely tipped upside down right now, and I want to push that even further. Often people get to this spot, and they often talk to God about what's going on inside. Often it's when people look back and say, I remember the day I trusted Jesus for the first time. I remember the day I put my trust in Jesus for the first time. And often there's a conversation with God that happens. It often goes something like this. I understand that I'm incapable of self-rescue. I believe that Jesus came to pay off debts that weren't his, but they were mine. And right now, here, today, I receive the forgiveness that God that you've been offering all along. Man, I need you to move in. I need you to change me from the inside out. I need you to transform me now into the person I want to be and the person you created me to be. Thank you for loving me long before I even knew to love you. Man, I just wonder, a couple years from now, how many people go, Mother's Day weekend, 2019. That was the weekend where I talked to God for the first time. I'm incapable of self-rescue. Jesus came. I believe he came to pay off debts that were mine. I'm receiving the forgiveness he's been offering all along. God, I need you to come in, change me from the inside out. Thank you for loving me long before I loved you. I just wonder how many of you will look back and you just say, Mother's Day weekend 2019 was when the switch flipped. And I began to see that it wasn't about my earning God's love. It was about receiving God's gift. This was what Martin Luther experienced that began to transform the rest of his world. 2 verses after this one, for we are God's what? Handiwork. It's like craftsmanship. It's like he's molding you into a piece of art. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus. Like he starts this recreation process, this renovation process. Read to me what's in highlighted. Ready? To do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. We receive this gift. We ask God to come in and move inside, and then he begins to transform us and to do a life of good works, which is not just your vocation, but would absolutely include your vocation. Listen, God doesn't love you because you're good. He loves you because he's good. But once he comes in, he desires to grow a life of goodness. And this right here is grace-infused work. It's grace-empowered work. What I'm trying to communicate is this, that when God does a work of grace in your life and you realize, I did not earn it, I did not deserve it, God, I invite you to come in and change me from the inside out. You might find that he empowers you to love unlovable people. You might find that he empowers you to serve ungrateful people. This beautiful baby that you brought home from the hospital, who has turned into a 3-year-old monster, demanding, unthankful, ungrateful. All I'm saying is, in your work, you need Jesus very badly. It's grace-empowered work. It's the ability to love and to show grace and to show mercy when you're not always getting what you want. What I'm trying to say here is that work doesn't have to be just about me. Work doesn't have to be just about you. You say, what is it that you bring to work? And you say, I bring aggressiveness. I bring drive. I bring self-sufficiency. Awesome. Awesome as long as those things are used in the service of other people. Keller writes that when it becomes all about us, aggressiveness sooner or later becomes abuse. Drivenness becomes burnout. And self-sufficiency becomes self-loathing. When I'm using my work to rescue me. When I'm using my work to prove my value. When I'm using my work to feel like I'm enough. And the cross of Christ says, I value you, you're enough, and you have a new identity as my beloved daughter and my treasured son. Here's the deal. Once you've come to know God's grace, you no longer try to find your identity in your work, you bring your identity to your work. This is a radical new idea, a radical new shift that can change the way you view your work and relate to people in it, and the way you view the work of others. What we've been trying to say is that your work matters, your work matters, your work matters to God. 3 radical ideas: that work is a way that God cares, work is a way that you love, and work is a way that when it becomes grace empowered, allows you to do something that you could never do on your own. It's a Friday morning. Chris and I go out to breakfast. I'm sitting, we're looking through the window and we're watching people take off slips of paper and make these breakfast meals, and servers take them off to tables. And I'm looking through the window and going, this is God's work. This is God's work, even if they're unaware of it. See, work, it's the way God cares for me. Work, it's the way I get to love others. Work, when it's infused and when it's empowered by grace, can begin to reflect the mercy and the grace and the creativity of God, in whose image you were made. And it can begin to transform you into the person and into the blessing that you long to become. Let me ask you to stand in this room and in our campuses as well. Again, just happy Mother's Day weekend, and I get to pray for us before we take off. Gracious God, we give thanks for this day. We give thanks that we were in each other's company. We give thanks that we were able to open your word and explore it. Once again, we ask that as we move into our week, as we move into our work, gracious God, transform us. Use us powerfully in the lives of others. We ask this in the name of Jesus, our Lord, who came here for us. Amen. We'll see you next week.